welcome to the stage! One, your MC, moving on! Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. It is genuinely so exciting to see real people. Can you give me a cheer if you're reading tonight? Yay! If you're one of our new MA students. If you just came here for fun. That was more than I expected. But yeah, thank you so much for coming here tonight. As you probably know, this is the launch of IX, the Manchester Anthology. And hello to everyone on YouTube, if you're here. I feel like a streamer. But yeah, it's so great to be here. And you know, I can't believe you're going to finally say we did it! This is a real life book. I mean, there's not many occasions you get to actually dress up as your own book. But all of you guys can say you've been to the event where all future 28 winners of the Booker Prize. I joke, but genuinely, these 28 writers, like, I can't name them because we don't have enough time, but they're all such brilliant, hardworking, resilient people who did a whole degree in a pandemic online. So can we give them all a round of applause? Now, I know we're in the time constraints, so I'm not going to waste too much time. This man needs no introduction, but I've been told to read one out for him, so I will. Sorry, John. So, John McAuliffe won the RTE Poets of the Future Award in 2000 and published his first book, A Better Life, brackets, Gallery, in 2002, which received a bursary from the Irish Arts Council and was shortlisted for a Pulitzer Prize. We love to hear people winning money. His second book, Next Door, was published in 2007. His poems appeared in The Guardian, Irish Times, and many literary journals. With Ian McGuire, he founded the Centre for New Writing in 2007. They founded and co-edited the Manchester Review. He wrote the foreword for this year's anthology, IX, the 2021 Manchester Anthology, in case you weren't clear. Now, please welcome to the stage, John McAuliffe!
I'm kind of horrified that I'm going to have to follow that with my sober speech. But thank you so much. So I have written something out, and I am going to read it. That's what writers are like, aren't we? You know, the idea of standing up as Ruby did without a text and just saying things has always terrified me. Anyway, it is really, really brilliant to meet many of you for the first time tonight. And can we turn up the lights a little bit? Would that be okay? Because I haven't seen them all year, really, and I really would. Thank you. And I just would like to be able to get a look at you as I'm talking to you in sort of a three-dimensional. Oh, that is so much better. That is so much better. Thank you, thank you. So I'm going to read out what I have written. But I do want to say again, it's just like Sam, who I was his dissertation I was supervising. You know, we were just talking on Zoom the whole time, and I felt like I knew Sam, but we didn't know how tall we were. You know? And it has been, and it's been so great to see some people I knew as undergraduates, to see Wen Yu back here again as well. So brilliant to see Wen Yu, and so people who I haven't seen in a couple of years as well. To see Marlon, who's doing a part-time and who was at one of these events two and a half, at one of these anthology launches 2.5 years ago. And there's these lovely little threads for me to come back into the room and to see people. Even see Kate from PFD, who's, you know, we've only ever talked on Zoom over the last couple of years as well. So, anyway, back to what I wrote. So, last April 2020, I had the dubious privilege of publishing one of the first batch of books whose launches had to be moved entirely online or cancelled altogether. That was fun, not like this. It was an absolute mess, but mostly because I missed this and the chance to see people, which book publication brings with it, to escape my room and and my usual circles, to hear new writers, to be part of other conversations which might otherwise have passed me by entirely. So I was very sad last April that I missed all the kind of opportunities that you have tonight. I felt lost. My book travelled out into the world without me entirely, and I was sent back to my notebooks and on to the next set of poems, back to the work of making something that I would want to last, which is what I want to do. But I like the other side of things also. Now, you're going to have to excuse a poet, and using this as a sort of a metaphor is the kind of thing that we do. It strikes me that an MA course, this MA course, exists as a sort of year-long orientation of work, orientation of you as a writer as well, a discovery of compass points, of north and dog and evening stars. The MA is an opportunity to start or to join new conversations with your peers, with your lecturers, with agencies like PFD or publishers like Parkinet who have a close association with this course. My feeling has been teaching you over the last year the intensity of the exchanges, the wild tropic growth and overspill of your work has happened, in spite of the way in which the outside world has weighed in and weighed down on the usual interpersonal, in-person and personal exchanges that we have on the MA. When Zoe and Lucy and Ruby, and a round of applause for Zoe, who's not here and I hope is watching, but also for Lucy and Ruby, who did such brilliant work. Along with the rest of the team who put this beautiful book together. But when they were sending me the work to read, and they were so organized, you were so organized, you had it for me so early, and I was so slow getting back to you, and I'm sorry. But you were so great. But I loved reading the fiction students for the first time, and I loved reading them alongside one another. Again, have a kind of sneaky eavesdropping on the conversations which had seen one person go one direction and another elsewhere, and to see the poets, my poets, and to see them and which poems it was that they had picked, and why did they pick those ones and not the, you know, and I loved it. And what I thought was that this is the work of writers who have persevered, who have learned from one another, and who have also had the guts and the stamina to line up and to see out their projects. Again, in spite of every gravitational force field that was thrown at you so unusually over the last 15 months or so. So it was an absolute pleasure for me to see that work. And also, it tested you all, it tested us all, of course it did. But I really do hope that there is something in that testing which is going to give you that sort of spirit of endurance, which I was just talking to Kate about earlier, is just such a vital part of keeping going as a writer. Now, I'm going to say now before I hand over to Aruj, but I didn't realize that Aruj is in Jordan, and actually he's going to be doing a Zoom. And then I was going to do that, but then I wrote another 2 paragraphs. Now, so I wanted to remind you of a few things that you must take with you. And this is my university. For Central Writing is part of an absolutely enormous university. And you've only seen a very small part of it through us because of Zoom. And I do have to, like, it's a stupid thing to say to you, I know really in some ways, but there is an amazing careers service as part of the university. And it's there for you for the next 2 years for you to just call them up and say, I'm having second thoughts about what I'm doing. Can I have a chat with you? Because here's what I'm interested in. And I want to, like every writer, build up some other thing I'm doing while I'm doing my writing. They're there for you. That's their entire job. There's a fleet of them, and they want to hear from you. They're twiddling their thumbs at their desks, wondering where you are. Okay? So that's the general part of the university, which you must access. Okay? That's part of what you must do. But the Centre for New Writing is an intense year for all of you. And it will, this year I hope is going to be something you remember. I know you will, really. But it's also a continuing resource. We want you to stay in touch with us. We will be writing references for many of you for many years to come. I was saying to George earlier, you know, I'm writing references for students that I taught 15 years ago, and I'm happy to do it and to be in touch with people. And Kay, we all are, aren't we? You know, so we love to hear from you, and we do want to be people who will be there for you when you need that kind of professional context for things. When you're writing new work, when you change direction as a writer, you should just drop us a line and let us know. We're interested in that. And we will be. When you have news of the work that you're doing, drop us a line and we circulate it to the big kind of alumni list that signs up to the newsletter. Sign up to the newsletter and you'll hear about what your peers will be doing. And the other thing is, we are you know, long in the tooth. And we do have advice for you. You may not want to listen to us, but you may want to come back to us and say, here's what's happening lately. I'm not really sure what I should do. And you should come back to us and ask us questions in a kind of an informal way as well, and just drop us a line about things, and we do get back to you. Now, the MA has shown you, I hope, what a steady routine and discipline can do for you as a writer. And to end the MA can feel like both a massive relief and also, as you were saying, it's exhausting. You've had an dissertation, and it can feel like, you know, I've done all that writing this summer, and I've managed to complete something to it. I'm just going to take a break. Don't take a break. Now it must also be a time when you borrow some momentum from what you've done over the past year. You review what you've done. Have a look back at when you were at your most active as a writer. Take a look back, just literally do a little data study of your emails about when you were writing most. Have an eye on when you wrote most. Was it mornings, was it evenings, was it weekends? And try and plan those times which you'll have discovered across this year suit you best as a writer, and try and build that in a kind of a nice, reliable, private way into your ongoing schedule. And it is on you now. There's none of us saying it's got to be in by 12 o'clock on Friday. You know, you've got to have your draft in by this date or nobody's going to read it. And of course, you do. That's not for this year's LA students to hear. But you do need to keep the momentum going at this point. The other thing I want to say is that all of us at the Centre for New Writing have portfolio careers. All of us do bits of teaching outside the university. We all do journalism. Some of us are involved in activism. Some are involved in caring activities. And there are all kinds of things that we do alongside writing. And it's a very, very tricky balancing act for you to leave the MA and to go back into the world of work, as you will be doing, and maintaining your habits of writing. But do work on that. You know, it is work for you to try and fit your writing into a life where you will find 1,000 other ways to more financially lucrative ways to use the hours of your week. But the reason that we, as writers, do it is, you know, it's what William Maxwell said to Frank O'Connor, the short story writer, when he was editing. He credited him with knowing the happiness of getting things done right. And the absolute pleasure of that is something you've got to hang on to as a writer, the happiness of getting things done right. Now, I'm going to return to this idea of conversation and orientation with which I began. The intense online series of orientations which the MA has brought to you may be over, but not our conversation. Some of you, and I say this every year, but you're going to have voices from the MA in your ear for a long time. I expect my poets to know at a certain point when they're drafting something that polysyllabic adjective they're reaching for is the wrong thing to do. And there will be a moment, I hope, when you look up wherever it is you are writing and think, oh, my writing must absorb its own occasion. Do you remember that? My writing must absorb its own occasion. Yeah? Okay, so there are things like that I hope you will hear those voices in your head. They're useful, and hang on to them. But you will also, long after this night, have ongoing and changing conversations with one another, which will be instrumental in your writing lives. Stay in touch with us, clearly, but also do stay in touch with one another. Do check in on one another, send one another your work. celebrate each other's successes when they come, and commiserate with one another if, say, your book arrives the next time a global crisis seizes the world. I'm going to finish now, I really am, with a few lines from the great Spanish poet Gabriel Garcia Lorca, writing a letter to his friend Jorge Guillen. Now, this is an exchange and a letter writing which the poems came from. And that's the context that you want to take out of the MA, that art, doesn't occur in a vacuum. And you need one another's ears to be kind of psychologically there in the distance for you as writers. Lorca was a poet who knew that writers need to be alone, but also that they are part of the communities that they leave behind them, but that they also take with them. He wants, he says in his letter, to be free and also to be responsible only to the sunlight and the breezes. And here's what he writes: I'd like to leave you and be alone under the decapitated North Star, by the broken and submerged compass that I still steer by. I'm going to hand over now to
Amazing, thank you. We have 3 people from our cohort who submitted videos because they couldn't be here in person, so yay that they could still read their pieces with us. So we're going to read their bios very quickly, and then you will have the pleasure of seeing them from their homes reading their pieces. So firstly, you will hear from Debbie. Debbie is a northern nomad currently living in Glossop. Do you see that I have this written down just like John said? Yes. Thank you. At the edge of the Peak District, she wrote her memoir, Midowed, in the aftermath of her son's death in a road traffic accident in 2018. Tonight, she's reading an extract from Midowed.
I'm not gonna lie, it makes me almost cry every time I read it. Just a warning. Also, we've got Aru Janwar. Aru Janwar is many things: an artist, fashionista, foodie, shoe addict, Friends fanatic, the TV show, not the concept of Friends. But above all, a lover of language. And as a teacher, she shares this love with teenagers who repeatedly ask what the relevance is of studying Shakespeare's sonnets. Her poetry reflects the silent moments of everyday life and stories, told through the lens of a British Pakistani Muslim woman navigating her way through life, in the hope that a stranger somewhere will read her work and connect it. She'll be reading a selection of poems entitled AA, A Decade in the Making.
And lastly, we have Louise Berger, who was born in Germany but made her getaway many years ago. With a background in philosophy, anthropology, and the arts, she's become fascinated with states of displacement. Be it physical or psychological, her writing uncovers the surreal and strange that hides in people, unknown towns in the middle of nowhere, or right behind you. Yes, right there. Please enjoy.
And their souls open told. Liz and I entered now for the room. Beige walls, blinds drawn, a solitary blue plastic chair. It is calmer now. The machinery has gone. There are no whirs or beeps. Hello, Dan, I say, my voice catching with surprise. The tubes and head brace have gone too. He looks like Dan, asleep. He's been washed clean and is cool to my touch. His eyes now are not sticky or dull, but closed, his brown lashes resting softly. His hair is tousled as usual, exactly as it should be, and free of matted blood. He's in his newest Manchester United top, his black skinny jeans. I kiss his smooth cheek, and to my lips his skin feels normal, alive. In this false slumber, it is as if he has been released, and I feel a surge of hope, almost expecting him to sit up and say, "Flippin' heck, what was that all about, eh?" And then we'd laugh and hug. But he doesn't. We had a great time getting those jeans on, the blonde nurse smiles. I'm sure I return the smile. I'm clean too. While 4 surgical teams worked to remove Dan's organs, I broke the horrendous news to my parents, slept, showered, and now I'm here beside him in a different jumper and jeans. Liz has showered too. Her husband Gary has brought her freshly pressed clothes. They look somehow artificial in contrast with her tear-crumpled face. I cannot yet look at my face. I don't want to see what my pain looks like. We've been to see Nanny and Grandad. They send their love, I say, my attention back on Dan. Everyone we've told has said how proud they are of you, adds Liz, patting his arm. My thoughts are slippy. I know Dan is not alive, but he is right here in front of me, dressed like Dan. His organs have been taken, but he still looks real to me. And what else have I got now?
Hi there, my name's Andrew. First of all, sorry that I can't be there with you guys today to celebrate. And I just wanted to say congratulations and well done for all your hard work with the anthology and anyone who contributed. I'm sure it'll be a lovely evening. So I was on the editing team for poetry, and I've also submitted some poetry to the anthology. So I'm looking forward to getting my copy. And I will be reading some of my work for you today. So the first piece I will be reading is called AA. So AA, I'm the child of an immigrant. I'm the one here to steal your job, a multilingual masterpiece, show harmonies with Jimmy Choos and pasta bake with too much chili powder. I'm a Muslim, the dirty terrorist here to blow you up, the call to prayer 5 times a day, the fasting and the furious once a year, mates with Adam and Eve, oh, and Jesus too. I'm a survivor of a broken home. Age of 7, questioned by the police, those brown paper envelopes from HMRC, 45-minute school walks in torrential rain, coming home to add to smart prize beans. I'm a woman, rape whistles and car key shanks, ignoring catcalls from dodgy white mans, saying no and no and no again, but aren't you going to let me have any fun? I'm a teacher, red pen on the whiteboard and gold stars in their books, alliterations and rhymes running free, miss, I really need a read, and if all else perished and nothing remained, I'd still be a part of the no, not even water crew, still a 2-mile walk to school, and when someone asks me what I am, I'll have to say that I am a poet. The second piece I'm going to read is called A Decade in the Making. A decade in the making. 1. I saw you today for the first time. You had one foot against the wall outside Primark on Market Street where the tram circled. My feet touched the platform. Ballet pumps, flared coat, black lace dress, lipstick that came off as soon as you noticed me. 2. I saw you today. We sat and planned, walk-in closet of all my shoes, ensuite bathroom for your morning shower and shave. And the kitchen table, me, you, Maya, Isaac, we sat across your mother for the first time. Those chairs are for our future kids, you whispered. Faces crimson, your legs slapped playfully. 3. When I saw you next, you were smiling in a photo I stumbled across, sitting next to your bride and wasn't me. She would now have to pretend and laugh up to your jokes, sit with you at that kitchen table, and iron anecdote you tell of your foolish youth. 4. I saw you again today, tan line with your 4th finger, a little less hair on your head, some grey in mine. Round 2 you smoked, sharp exhale, eyes rolled, fist clenched, worn out windows of my private school reflecting your grin. Get your foot off my car. Thank you for listening. I hope the event goes well, and once again, congratulations to everyone.
Hey, sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but I'm very glad that you're there, or that you're listening. and I'm excited to read a little bit of my story for you. It's a difficult thing when people go missing. It's not illegal for people to disappear, as Sergeant had told him before. It's a problem when you can't figure out why. It had been a problem when both parents had vanished, leaving behind a teenage son. That kind of thing was a crime, though Ed hadn't known until later. He thought about that somewhat. It hadn't made sense to the officers investigating their absence. Why would they do that, they'd asked, but found no real answer. It hadn't made sense that they had left no trace, be it physical or on paper, to where they could have gone, no motive, nothing. In the end, it had been the corpus delicti that had put their efforts on ice. No body, no crime. That didn't mean that they couldn't have been a crime, but without evidence, without anything, they did nothing. So the investigators had tried their best, had talked to him again and again, talked to anyone they could think of, but nothing had ever come of it. As Ed had taught them themselves, things hadn't been perfect behind closed doors. His mother drank, his father didn't, and neither of them seemed too happy, or so he had said. He hadn't taught them much more, and the interviews had eventually shifted to ice cream on Saturday afternoons. He'd been a child, after all, a child who just lost his parents, who'd been left in the care of the state for his last years of adolescence, too old to be adopted, too old for a family, it seemed. He thought that they must have pitied him. Ed takes a long walk home, straying along the roads of his hometown, roads he knows well but wanders with a subtle sense of unease. It is a feeling that has lasted throughout his life, the feeling that has started back then. Uncertainty, he thinks, if not apprehension. It is a feeling of an unresolved past that is yet to be buried completely.
Another round of applause for everybody who's Right, that was brilliant. Right, but now we've got a man who I've worked with, he's a great writer. Sam Burt is a bookseller and recovering ex-teacher living in sunny East London. He is fiction editor for the journal The Inkling and was previously arts editor for the Mancunian. His essays and reviews are featured in The Guardian, The London Magazine, and Free AM Magazine, and his poetry has appeared in Ink, Sweat and Tears. He is currently working on some life coaching and the third in a series of stories following political events in Afghanistan in the 1970s, the first of which was published last year in Hot Shot Quarterly. What follows is an extract of the opening of Connor and Mo, a novel. Round of applause!
Standing directly under the dining room lights and staring out at the unlit hallway, she feels like an actor on stage. It's important to Lydia that she doesn't have to live in another house with atmosphere. The A word means living like a spider on a web of tripwires. It means immeasurable pettiness and overworked white noise machines. Lydia dreams of throwing out her white noise machine. As far as house shares go, Lydia's have gone from bad to worse. It's not like she has a choice. Her mother and father live alone in separate, spacious studio flats. She tried a studio herself once. No. She doesn't cope well with being left on her own. Voices from outside slip through the doorway with her. They seep through the walls. Perhaps she could manage in a vacuum or a cork-lined room, anywhere she wouldn't hear conversations that make her feel excluded. These feelings of exclusion were the focus of her therapy sessions, before her therapist died in an accident involving a photocopier. The only alternative, cohabiting with friends, is no longer an option for her at 28. She doesn't have a lot of friends, and they're all in studios or on the property ladder. What matters is what she's learned, that atmospheric conditions tend to stabilize at an early stage in the life cycle of a house, without anyone having noticed. By the time someone checks the barometer, it's usually too late. In her experience, there are few things that seem less possible than trying to re-establish a pattern of small talk where said pattern has withered and died. And so, here she is, running the experiment again, thinking this time, through sheer force of will, she will bond the members of this house together. Films and TV have taught her that food is a good binding agent. Moe shuffles into the light, head down, then looks up and takes in the scene reluctantly, biting his lower lip. "Hi there, how's it going?" Lydia asks, light beaming from the plates and from her face, which is shining with sweat and steam. He shrugs. "Shit, I didn't know you was going to so much trouble. Now I feel bad." "It's nothing." "Yeah, but I already ate." Stay calm. "Your face." Quick dice up, then soberly. Sorry. She scowls at him theatrically. "Come give me a hand with the drinks." "You thought I was serious?" "Ice goes in there." "Do I seem like that kind of guy?" He gives her a look like she's questioned his honour. He's like a righteous schoolboy, she thinks. She must avoid this playfulness becoming actual flirtation. She must also try to avoid seeming to take his jokes too seriously. She has sometimes wondered whether must features as heavily in other people's thoughts as it does in hers.
Thank you, Sam. That was lovely. Next we have Abigail Shaw, who is a writer from Wirral. She made the grand return to Manchester for her MA, having received a BA in English Literature and Creative Writing at UM 3 years prior. She writes poetry, short fiction, and creative nonfiction. While her poetry tends to thrive in dark and liminal spaces, she also takes inspiration from her wonderful family and the natural world. She likes dogs, who doesn't? The sound of rain and religious iconography in, Empire films. She will be reading a selection of poems entitled A Minute More and The Drink. Sorry, Abby, you kind of butchered your bio there, but welcome, Abby, to the stage, everyone.
Hello. I'm Abby, and I'm going to be reading 2 poems. And the first one is called A Minute More, and it's about nostalgia. A minute more. A brownie camp sun suggests nostalgia can be felt in the weather, or in the hand, outstretched and motoring through velociraptor grass, in the biscuit tin that hides the pins to sew the sash, in pigtails or bunk beds, or walking 2 by 2 through churchyards, little mites and midges up to their knees in a stream, first summers of heat and grass, the sweet smell of cow parsley, or was it hemlock in the hedgerows? Or perhaps it could be found in the sound of frozen peas in a metal pan, in a caravan evening, in the bruised dusk over Ullswater, or under a great steel bridge, in the claws of a crayfish, in the condensation collected on luminous cabools. It can be found in chin-tucked looks down to mum tying shoes, the heather-struck hills, the beckoned fingers of furled ferns hidden away in incessant wood, all fat and bowing from the hot rain. A whippersnapper candle suggests it can be felt in the fumbled light gathered in the hearth, or in the fermented wet soil down the garden path, the peak of the steady drip, an uncharismatic roof. It can be found in the primordial slime of my racing snails, the slippery oafs, their chase laid. Alone in the low light, I was squinting and sheathed in a sleeping bag, cheering them on. Now we're going in an altogether different, darker direction. This is a poem called The Drink. The drink that I was handed was an amaretto Coke. You can pop a balloon with just a little poke. I left my hometown to make myself some friends. You can kill a flower just by cutting off the stem. He serves me at the checkout. He's helped me change a tire. Have you ever seen a fox that's been caught in chicken wire? The screaming of its struggle as summer bubbles him to soup. Wire cut a pity, and he'll thank you in the coop. The drink that I was handed was the dirty blood of Christ, and what I had between my legs was girlish sacrifice. I never got to realise what was special about sex before I became half part of the half things that you left. The drink that I was handed was a glass of dry white wine. The drink that I was handed was tequila sans the lime. The drink that I was handed was the skeletal remains of who took the drink before me, all the girls without a name. The drink that I was handed was a bowl of lukewarm spit, and Rape Me by Nirvana was playing in 8-bit. Skin as white as milk, skin so quick to spoil. I am curdled, I am creamy, I am slit as slick as oil. The drink that I was handed was a virgin white Russian. You can bruise a peach with just the sound of percussion. You can stain a bed only with a drop of ink. You can waste a woman by handing her a drink. Yeah!
Oh my god! Well, she did say you could bruise a peach with percussion. And it tried falling off the stage. Apologies, Abby. That was brilliant. Yeah, and I really hope you're okay. If all future readers could delicately get off the stage, I'm not that well trained in first aid. Now on to the next reader. Charlotte Maloney has been writing. Oh, yeah. Sorry, there are two Charlottes on this card. Sorry, Charlotte. Charlotte Maloney has been writing since childhood. Charlotte particularly enjoys exploring the complexities and nuances of interpersonal relationships. In terms of theme and style, she cites Gillian Flynn and Lionel Shriver as two crucial influences. She's attended writing workshops across the country, entered short story competitions, and was delighted to have her Bronte-inspired piece read aloud in a Gaskell House event. She'll be reading an extract of her piece, Catch. Please welcome Charlotte to the stage!
As the newlyweds, we'd have the neighbours round for drinks. The conversation felt like a reenactment of the school game, mums and dads. How are the kids? Has Sophie mastered the potty yet? They were nice enough, but I didn't really care. And according to Cora, no offspring of theirs would amount to much. Once they had left, we'd impersonate them, and it made us giddy. We'd fall about laughing, which turned us on. We were in our late 20s then, but thought of ourselves as being in a suspended state of youth, and on top of that, we had proper jobs and a nice flat. We didn't accept that adulthood had arrived. We never thought we'd start to yearn or feel the need for children, for example. It didn't seem like us. Although we did have Felicity, a little tabby cat, more or less took care of herself. There had always been a nastiness in Cora, of which I was aware from the beginning, but hoped wouldn't break through the surface more than it needed to. Being loving towards me in the traditional ways had never come naturally. I'd accepted that she was an ice cream when we met in a backstreet bar in Howell Hempstead. I initially found it quite attractive, the elusivity, and didn't mind her telling me that I didn't suit blue or that I should stop buying cheap shirts. But after a few years, she'd had enough of dealing with me a particular way and changed tack. You look like shit, she said one evening, working on the crossword. Stopping dead in my tracks, all I could produce was a brown meat. Why? You just look unattractive, she answered. You really let yourself go. Is it the stubble? In an attempt to tease her, I sidled up and adjusted my tie. I thought I was rugged. Do you prefer me clean shaven? She looked me up and down as you would an unremarkable job candidate. I liked when you looked like the man I married. It stung. I'd never been anything special, but nothing much had changed, and I didn't think her attraction to me was dependent on presentation. Well, I scrambled for words and remembered she'd had her hair done the day before. That haircut doesn't suit you. She didn't flinch. Her opinion is so immaterial, it's hilarious. Not looking up from her crossword, she stood slowly and took it to the other room. Felicity observed me from the kitchen, ears flat against her head.
Right, another round of applause for Charlotte there. God, sounds so much stressed now every time someone gets off the stage. Okay, so On to our next writer. You may recognise her. Hayley Lawson is an American writer and teacher. She is taught in the USA, Mongolia, and South Korea. A lover of all things make-believe and magic, Hayley writes genre fiction. Having finished 2 fantasy novels, she will be reading an extract of her latest project, Typhoon. Hayley writes under the pen name HML Swan. Please welcome to the stage, Hayley!
Thank you. Typhoon. A typhoon was coming. Amelia could feel it in the air. The wind twisted the trees and sent chimeras flailing into the skyscrapers. Through the cafe's open door, their hideous screeching mixed with the faint sounds of crumbling concrete. Magda rode a powdered blue moped made from recycled parts. She parked it in the middle of the road. Vortices of brown leaves and debris swirled around her feet. Magda's thick plastic heels had toy dinosaurs immobilized in the synthetic material, like fossils frozen in amber. Typhoon's coming, she said, sitting across from Amelia. I've got a jump for you. Magda pulled a contract out of her pleather bag and slid it across the table. Catching the barista's eye, she pointed at Amelia's cup to signify her order. Despite the wind whistling past the door, the cafe's customers were stagnant and still. Water sputtered through the espresso machine's corroded valves, and the barista poured and delivered another weak shot to their table. Amelia sipped her own Americano. The vapor fogged her goggles, and she repositioned them on top of her leather aviator's helmet. The coffee was bitter, gritty, and tasted of sawdust. Then again, it wasn't truly coffee. It couldn't be. But Amelia didn't care to know what she was actually drinking. Nowhere was the place everything unwanted ended up. Plastic, hardware, technology, old keys, lost loved ones, and mythical creatures no one believed in anymore. So, Magda said, pulling the flask from her neon plastic trench, will you be taking the job then? Potent liquid gurgled into her coffee. Amelia watched this in the mirror reflection of Magda's heart-shaped glasses, teal in color. Amelia took the contract, relishing the feel. It was real paper, smooth and dry, not damp and made out of mulched trash. When's the jump? Less than an hour. The catch? Amelia said, placing a finger between the sealed pages. The scar on her left forearm was visible even in the low light of the cafe, a thick, carved A. Its size and gruesome amount of scar tissue made it hard not to notice. It's not a catch, it's a release. It's already in your Cessna. Magda nodded her shaved head towards the window. Thank you. Hello. You may recognize this writer as well. Ruby Martin is a writer, journalist, and performer from Cornwall, now currently based in Manchester. She was selected for Penguin's Right Now program, has performed at the Edinburgh Fringe, and was a Street Cake Magazine Experimental Prize winner in 2019. She writes both fiction and nonfiction and is currently working on her first novel. Her fiction ranges from the weird and tragic to the funny and lighthearted, and in general, she is interested in exploring how humor and form can be played with to explore more complicated and darker subjects. She will be reading her short story, The Minute Before Sleep. Welcome her to the stage.
In the minute before sleep, the words in my head took me down an unfamiliar street. I had been remembering the previous day when my thoughts meandered down to an unknown shop front. I don't know what it sold, but you were there. You were wearing a postbox red coat, standing alone as though you needed somewhere to go. Before you left, you turned to me, your face still lost. Sorry, just passing through. I didn't see you again for a couple of months. I was languishing on the couch, stuck there by the summer heat. It was late afternoon. Post-lunch fatigue weighed on my eyelids as the TV flickered in the background. The channels blurred into visions of holidays past. Yet there you were, lounging on the beach somewhere. This time your cheeks were rosy. You've caught the sun, I slurred. You looked at the blue sky behind you and back to the open book perched on your chest. Your eyes widened. Oh, shit! And then you went, and the darkness followed. It was not until the next day that I realised I recognised the beach. Coral Bay. It was only 30 minutes away, 30 minutes drive away, and I'd always been meaning to visit. The next time there was a sunny weekend, I arranged to meet friends there. I cycled down an hour early. Not sure why. I didn't expect anyone I knew to be there but still, I looked around. Settling down, I plunged my feet off the end of the towel into the warm sand. Opening my book, I let the sand sift slowly between my toes. The heat combined with long, prosaic sentences soon sent me to sleep. "You swap places," he said, looming over me. I was aware I was no longer on a beach. Instead, a new grey skyline surrounded both of us. The bathing suit felt very small under scrutiny. Not really. I avoided eye contact and looked at the surroundings. Faceless concrete buildings stood just out of focus. I felt like I knew it, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. It had a small garden just like my block of flats, except it was full of strange flowers and sculptures that swayed to a non-existent breeze. This didn't look like my home at all. "Don't catch the sun now!" he cried out. I wanted to reassure you, but you were gone. It was a few months before we spoke again. The whoosh in the trees outside had just turned into a newfound sea. And there you were, your head bobbing along in a shape-shifting ocean. "What do you reckon this means?" You looked at me blankly. "This?" You nodded your head towards the water. "I'm just hoping it means I haven't pissed myself." I laughed, which rang out surprisingly clear in the otherwise muted landscape. "I meant us meeting like this. How do you know if I'm real?" "I guess I don't." I wiggled my toes, which were starting to become tentacles. But I'm glad that if you're not, my subconscious has such a sense of humour. You chuckled at this, your laughter dissolving into the sea foam. You were gone again, but I knew you'd be back.
I was so in raptures with that I forgot I had to MC this next bit. So, we're really excited to have Charlotte Pacey come to the stage. She strives to be a fiction writer and poet. Her writing tends to obsess over themes of emotional experience, relationship, and place, among others, and how these aspects contribute to the way we understand our mosaic selves and each other. Some might call it literary realism. Her work is featured in several multimedia pieces, including a collaborative project with Myth and Salford-based gallery Paradise Works, and an Arts Council-funded venture blending poetry with ambient soundscapes. She'll be reading a selection of poems entitled The Art of Permeation. She's also controlling our tech side, so give her a very big, warm, and welcome from the back to the front.
In case you can't tell, it is my first rodeo doing tech tonight, so it's all going smoothly. Yeah, I'm just reading one poem this evening, and it's called The Art of Permeation. A shell of bodies drift beneath lights fractured tenfold by the mist. Colour rippling like petrol in a puddle. Blue fusing with toxic green on the current as your antennae traverse Aphrodisia. Through this net of souls, flagella frisk torsos and faces who rife into night's pulsing melodies, until their gaze moors to yours. Two alien vessels approaching through neon darkness, swept by one another's tide, and soon comes contact. Fingerprints that flowing Albion skin, trailing bioluminescence at your neck, throbbing jaw, the beach of your midriff. A knowing swells in their smile. Dyadic scents latch as pheromones surround and plume, in mucus webs waiting to copulate. Anticipation foams in your belly, like a wave rising to crest. A pair of clams opening, unveiling the red pearl birthed inside. What follows is a nuclear fusion of muscle. Succumb. Taste lust on their tongue, and marvel how many times this is happening right now in the blindness. A quivering bruise deep below, warm holes dilate as blood floods and saliva bubbles between the shoulders and lips. Popping against pink barnacles, jaws plunge onto flesh, passions glug and spur within like a geyser, and desire pours into them and into you like webs on. Their teeth nipping through soft mouth, hands grip throats and tongues discover ears where silhouettes engorge one another. A coalesced body gyrating amongst wreath of heads. Bass fills with heartbeats, while cravings breed and minutes lose all meaning until the tsunami subsides. Spindrift calms to coastal fizz. Tentacles retract inside clenched skulls, and like a drawn-out tide, distance forms between you. One multiplies to two, another tries to unmeet the night.
It's saucy, isn't it? And also, Charlotte, or at least in the bio, said you strive to be, you are a writer, but it's not a great one, so another round of I hope you lesson for any writers in the audience, including the future main ones, even if you haven't done any of your assignments yet, although you probably should. You are all writers. Don't say you're trying to be, you are. Anyway, inspirational talk over. On to the next person, who's another great writer. Wendy Pun is a writer from Macau who has enjoyed 4 years in Manchester studying English literature and creative writing. As a Chinese woman and a feminist, she tries to populate her surreal worlds with more women, diverse ethnicities, and gender identities to better represent the planet that we live in. She's concerned with the impact of technology on our lives, likes predicting and questioning human behaviour, and loves capturing our idiosyncrasies. She thinks humans are incredibly intelligent and wholesome, yet ridiculously dumb and infuriating at times. She will be reading a section from 2098. Round of applause for Winnie
Jay had stayed up all day again. She watched the small sliver of sky from her shuttered window and go from pigeon grey to tar-like in brown. She felt more familiar with the moon than she ever did with the sun. She saw the bleached, blinding sun as a cruel stranger. It sucked all the life out of any living thing beneath its touch. She knew deep down the sun was just an innocent, dying star, the giver of life, yet she could not bring herself to love it. She grew up with the moon as a light in the sky, the lonely pearl and the bleached coral reef that she called home. Jada decided to write a letter. She was sitting below the window at the desk that she and her brother shared. Kay was sleeping so soundly that it sounded like he was purring away. She fiddled with the pen that she had found in one of Mama's old trousers. The idea of using the hard plastic thing to write with was as alien to her as using a single chopstick to eat. She tried first with her left hand, then her right. She gripped the pen awkwardly, too tightly, and the words came slowly. The ink was a streaky blue, and the tip of the pen dragged reluctantly across the back of an old flyer that aired her flowers. When Jade was finished, she folded the piece of paper up, slid it into a makeshift envelope that she made from more flowers, and sealed the lid of it with some leftover rice. Little Jade. The door emitted a soft whoosh. Jade jerked awake. She had fallen asleep at the desk. Kay was gone, his bed unmade. Come and have some lunch. I made some noodles with soy sauce. You can have tea eggs too if you'd like. Jade pushed herself up with her elbows. Okay, Mom. She heard the door close again. Her mom never shut the door properly. She listened to the quiet shuffling of mouse slippers as she went back into the living room. The TV was switched on soon after. The same cold-faced news anchor was relating the news of the day. America was still on fire, and the dictator was still trying to cover it up. Almost half the population was convinced that it was a hoax. The other half was planning an armed revolution. More places going underwater. Ireland was getting smaller as they spoke. China still denied that they knew anything about the bioterrorist that was caught last week. Hottest day on record in the UK when they slept. A whopping 43 degrees Celsius. She strained her head to look out the window. The sky was black like burnt toast. Jake? She reluctantly pushed herself out of the chair. Kay stared motionlessly at the ceiling, slapped on the brown sofa like a dirty sock. Ma's parents were watching the TV next to Kay. Both had rollers in their hair. One was slowly painting his nails reflective red. Ma and Ba chewed and slurped noisily at their food. They sat around a peeling imitation wood table worn from years of use. Ugly grey plastic surfaced in large spots on the table. Through a window, Jake could see people in the other building doing the same thing as they were, 50 floors above the ground. Their faces were animated in weird light. Although the Chans were familiar with the neighbors' daily routines, and Jake believed that they were aware of theirs too, they did not know each other's names, nor had they ever crossed paths. They were not acquaintances, merely familiar strangers. All she knew about her neighbors was that they were climbing things like them.
Thank you, Enya. Next, we have Natalia Edwards. She resides in the ethereal land of the Wirral, just outside of Liverpool. Ooh, fancy. She completed a history BA at the University of Sheffield before studying creative writing at Manchester. She is featured on the NFFD 2021 blog page and is currently writing a short story collection exploring womanhood, the body, surgery, and trauma. She will be reading an extract of Ghost Directory.
This is the story is written as a list of memories that go forward before the present day, and this is the third memory. 3. 5 years and 5 months before. I'm in a 24-hour off-license drink. Over the past few months, I've become one of those girls who lingers in the smoking area outside clubs, begging people for cigarettes. I had about 50% success rate and a growing nicotine addiction. Then, finally, one guy said to me, just buy yourself a cheap bitch. So I did. The short blonde man behind the counter smiled. What can I get for you? I scoured my brain for cigarette brands before asking if he saw Jaws. I watched him roll back the screen and retrieve a recognisable plain white packet with an image of a black and blonde painted on the top. He also asked if I had a lighter. I didn't, so I bought that too. I stood outside the shop, watching the ever-growing line of people, and lit a cigarette. Maybe it felt even more intense because I was drunk, or because for the first time I could taste it as well as smell it. I had never actually smoked a blunt before. Suddenly, I'm standing outside of a social club with you. It's the start of a final year of sixth form. We're at a friends of a friend's 18th birthday. You were telling me about the latest guy you were seeing. You had taken his virginity and you were more than happy about it. He'd asked you how many men you'd slept with. You'd given him more than 3 rounds. I remember cutting you off as soon as the words left your mouth. Wait, why would you tell him that? You said you'd never tell anybody. It's fine. It was just a bit of fun we had once. I kind of liked it now. They were real best friends. Close to anyone else. And he thought it was really hot. Don't be like that. Like, it's fine. I trust him. Well, I don't trust him. I've never even met him. Don't tell anyone else, right? You pursed your lips and stayed silent. What the fuck else were you told? The taste of the cigarette twisted. The tar now clung to the back of my throat like a chemical lining. I pressed the ends of the cigarette against the wall until it crumpled over my fingers. Then I dropped it on the floor, stripping it against the heel of my trainer. In my slightly hysteric drunken state, I also thought the more thoroughly I stubbed it out, the more thoroughly I would eradicate the memory. I took the nearest car back I saw back to my accommodation.
I spent too many nights at the student off lessons. That was a great piece. Another round of applause for that! So the next writer did the podcast series for the Centre of New Writing, which I would highly recommend listening, not just because I'm on it, but also it's just a great podcast to hear about writers and what they think. But Oliver is a writer and digital inclusion officer for the Ethnic Health Forum, a Manchester-based charity. She's a podcast coordinator for Centrepoint and has been published in the Mancunian, the Manchester Review and Literati magazine. The current novel in progress looks at social discrepancies and forgiveness. Please welcome to stage, Thank you. We're in a scene where someone's just given birth.
The placenta is an amazing thing, Annabelle, the midwife beamed. It's worth having a look at.
Mother nodded vaguely in her direction. A dark bloody thing was being thrust in under her nose while she lay there with her knees up and legs spread. The midwife left, leaving a nurse to sit on the end of the bed. Outside, the clouds hung low, feverish. Mother glanced over at the plastic bassinet. There I was, her daughter, a white blanket in a small grey hand. A doctor strolled in, the midwife by his side. He was a small man with brown glasses and clean-looking skin. They smiled, and the doctor peered down at me. His forehead creased like a used napkin. The midwife nodded. Mother looked over at the colour of the curtains and asked whether anyone had thought about ordering new ones. The doctor turned his smile from her to the curtains and back again. He told her they'd have to run a few tests as standard procedure. How complicated decision-making was in hospitals, she thought. She looked down at her fingernails. She varnished them red on Wednesday. Without being sure if she was happy or sad, she started to cry. Annabelle, I don't want you to worry about anything. The doctor said, I'm not worried, she gulped. Mother wished she'd painted her nails pink instead of red. Pink would have looked demure and motherly. We're going to make sure everything is all right. All right. A nurse brought her butterscotch pudding and toast, explaining they were out of cereal, while I was transferred to a special care baby unit. To the midwife's surprise, all my test results were normal. They put me back in with Mother and explained in sing-song voices how sweet I was. A name had to be chosen for my birth certificate. Mother first wanted to call me something dainty, like Lily or Daisy, but the ephemeral nature of flowers worried her. She thought of Anne, which was sturdy, or Joan, but decided on Ruth because the Ruth she'd known was strong, independent women. Grandma drove down to see. She struggled to hide her disappointment and joked I was the runt of the litter, like a puppy left behind. Or the first draft. She was sure I'd be all right. She's bound to grow out of all this, she said, gesturing at me. Runts always end up tougher than you think. Mother wasn't sure what it was I was supposed to grow out of. Whatever a normal baby looked like, I couldn't be that far off. I weighed 6 pounds, looked like an old man, bit her tits and shat strange substances. The hard part was over. The baby had been birthed in her life, her real one could begin. She allowed herself to be shipped back to Suffolk. Back in her childhood bedroom, September sunshine poured through the open windows. Mother spent a few more days watching me feed and sleep and open my eyes. Grandma lived near Aldborough, close enough to the sea that from time to time the salty breeze made the leaves tremble in her green-thumbed garden. Dark wood beams ran across the white ceilings, and a stairway creaked in the middle of the night whenever anyone needed a wee. Thank you.
Eleanor. I love that reading started with the placenta, just like instantly. Wow. This next writer is just as captivating. Lucy is a poet and fiction author from Scotland and France, though she grew up in neither of these countries. Lucy takes inspiration from the natural world and folk tales from around the globe. Her poems examine the mind's relationship to the body, growing at the crossroads of different cultures, and 21st century loneliness. She uses her fiction to explore dream worlds where tides can stop in her tracks, the dead can speak, and mountains can stand up and turn cartwheels. She will be reading a selection of poems entitled Preserves.
Can I request a round of applause for Ruby and Hayley for MCing? And is there a poem about death? I thought about what poem I wanted to read tonight, and we started like the right one because it's about someone who can't be here to see it, and I feel like it's a good time to read. So this is Preserves. I write this all in the present tense because every time I make risotto, I am 17, hungry, and she is immortal. Crowded around the saucepan like two witches at the brew, Heather tells me not to stir anti-clockwise because that's how the devil gets in. At 14, she teaches me to love cooked fruit. She lets me reckon the yield of it, makes my mouth see it is witnessing what it feels like to ferment and return to the earth after summer has had its way with us. In the penultimate December, she shows me which fruits are in season. Oranges, lemons, persimmons, all sharp as a needle on the bed of my tongue. We make sums of satsumas studded with cloves. Some things can be kept long after they are gone. It is fitting that she should be named for a flower as hardy as the thing that killed her. Far from home at 22 and 3 years to the day since the Friday that we lost her, I am making food for 12 and overcooked 4 kilos of pasta, which my friends, laughing, help me turn into dough for bread. Time stretches and folds, heavy pressure, watching us eat. The summer after she died, I walked into the sea and tried to forget how to need breath. I am 19 and in the passenger seat. Between us, kind of days I have just learned are numbered. In my lap, the box of gingerbread we made that afternoon. We face forwards to watch the sun running like a lick. She breaks a biscuit in two, gives me the bigger half, and I ask her if she's afraid. She turns to look at me and tells me.
After I read that poem, it makes me cry. No, another round of applause for Lucy. That was amazing! Also, I noticed Hayley also did not pronounce her surname because neither of us could say it. So sorry, Lucy Lothcote. Hey, well done! Alright, and now on to our next reader, who I can say their names. Marilyn Westonhouse is returning to writing after juggling a career in university administration and raising a family. In an earlier incarnation, she worked in the press in South Africa. She is a keen sailor, having worked as a delivery crew and chartering in the Indian Ocean. She'll be reading a section from The Careless Sky, a novel based on actual events that took place in Somalia in the late 1970s at the height of the Cold War. Please welcome to stage, Marilyn!
Somalia, 1976. The girl stood frozen, marooned in the emptiness of the desert night. Somewhere off to her right, the hyena laughed. He had shaken off his pursuers and slowed to a lope. Above, the cold and personal vault of jeweled sky stretched, unyielding, uncaring. The girl hunkered down. She looked at the place where the vehicle had vanished, glanced in the direction of the hyena's laugh, and turning in the opposite direction, broke into a faltering run. Her pace strengthened as she covered ground. She was fast, strong for her slender frame. On either side, the obscurity of dunes lurked. She glanced up the closest elevation. Making an instant decision, she deviated sharply, starting to climb the slope. The slipping sand filled her shoes, clutched at her trouser bottoms. Her breath rasped with the exertion of pulling free, of lifting and placing each foot higher up the steep gradient. She flailed to the top. With a sob, she dropped to her knees. In every direction, the featureless tumble of landscape stretched to blacked-out horizons. There, just above an edge of the inky sky, a bright white star glowed, and above it another. Quickly, she located the other lights of the formation. She cried out in relief. She was not lost. As long as she could see that, the Southern Cross, she could find her way. Those months at sea, George had been showing her, showing the three of them, how the stars guided his navigation. The sky above was a map. If she used what George had taught her, she could make her way back to him. She was no longer alone. She could hear his voice in her head. At the closeness of him, a sob choked in her throat. What had they done to him? She held her breath, slowly released the out-breath, paced the inhalation, forced herself to bring the panic under control. She could use this rugged terrain, this darkness, to hide her, to help her escape, to get to him. Wiping her wet cheeks, she rose. She would make for the coast, go due east, keeping south on her right. When she reached the beach, she would find her way north along the coast. She moved quickly, sliding on her bottom, her feet pedaling, checking the downward momentum, her hands digging to pull herself up the next incline. Areas of level ground opened up between the dunes. She ran along these, keeping parallel to the slopes, resting her hammering heart and leaden legs. The moon was reaching its zenith. Cautiously, she hopped over the deeply furrowed cracks and jutting stone outcrops thrown into stark relief, the mosaic of shadow and light guiding her steps. She could not afford to twist an ankle now.
Can't afford to have any more ankles twisted in this show. Oh, time to stop. Now, for the next writer, I'm very sad she hasn't brought her beloved golden retriever, Betsy Trotwood.
Oh.
But the one thing I love more than Betsy is Melanie's writing. So, Melanie Johnson is a Northern woman inspired by Victoria Wood and Alan Bennett. A fiction writer of short stories and monologues, she studied at City Lit in London before joining the London Writers Collective. Melanie has taken time away from being a barrister who represented parents and children in Children Act proceedings. She is currently working on a novel exploring relationships within a dysfunctional family where the women lack agency. Melanie is influenced by local spoken word. She has read at literary events held at Waterstones and what's the name?
Say Galway Literary Festival, please.
Galway Literary Festival in 2017. She'll be reading a section of her menopause monologue. Please welcome to stage,
This is entitled The Change. Women should masturbate twice a week. I sprayed tea over my newly decorated walls. Radio 4? Menopause advice? Well, better late than never. Nobody talked about women's things in the 70s, at least not in Filey. Miss Bridson taught science from a textbook, aptly named Modern Biology. So modern, it had a picture of a turtle on the front. I was none wiser. The diagram of the penis looked nothing like that picture on the bush shelter declaring Basil was a dickhead. The uterus reminded me of the tree from that Auntie Joan tried to grow when she returned from her exotic holiday to Bournemouth. Girls need to know, buy chocolate and Nurofen to ease period pains. It was all too shameful. Greasy lads with lanky hair, smelling of high karate and sweat, shouted. She's on the rag when I was swimming. Nobody used tampons. They took away your virginity. It was easier to buy 20 Benson and Hedges than sanitary products. Only available at the chemist. God forbid anything should happen Wednesday afternoon when it was half-day closing. Embarrassed, I'd wait outside the chemist until it was empty. In a town full of pensioners, it could be hours, just for a packet of teenage Pampers. I was mortified when a classmate got a job at Whitfield's, one of the 2 chemists in town. I casually looked at cosmetics before going to the counter with my heather shimmer lipstick and a bulky bag of pads. It never occurred to me she had periods. Pads meant no jeans 1 week in fall. Luckily, long gypsy skirts were in fashion for a while. Trauma when we moved on to 2-tone mod skirts. My ignorance extended to the other end of this biological roller coaster. Finish there.
Oh, Mel, you always make me chuckle. I love it. Thank you. Next up, we have Joseph Coffey, who started writing as part of his year abroad study offered by the University of Kent. His writing aims to reflect his experiences living and working in London. He has an interest in liminal space, pockets of nature that hang on amid relentless change, and the people who make their lives in and around these spaces. He is interested in the contradictions of the suburbs and the characters these environments produce. He will be reading an extract from his nonfiction piece, Eileen and I. Please welcome Joseph.
It is nice to see you. I was spending quite a lot of time deciding where I was going to start, but here we go. Despite the noise of construction, the sound of wild nature is all around. In perfect Beatrice Potter style, a robin watches us from her perch on a rusting garden fork next to a decaying tool shed. She sings valiantly, fiery red against the dull winter palette, and waits for us to turn over the earth for her so she can feast on worms. Aileen has rented her allotment for nearly 20 years now. On her strip of earth, she grows all manner of berries and vegetables, pumpkins, courgettes, runner beans, sweet peas, raspberries, gooseberries, blackcurrants, onions, potatoes. I could go on. What is more surprising are the sections of the plot yet to be cultivated. A patchwork of soil and tarpaulin, intersected with ramshackle borders of wood and stepping stones, brick or concrete, metal poles stick out of the ground, disused scaffolding for running grapevines or stabilising fruit trees. Many are stopped with plastic bottles. Aileen tells me this is to stop the poles from ripping a rusty wound in the flesh, or piercing an eye if you were to slip on the mud. I've been coming up here every day these past few weeks, she says, but it takes a lot of work to fight back the weeds and get it all under control, so I appreciate your help. No problem, I say. It's good to be out working again. She points out some progress she has made since I was last up, and from around a rampant stand of invasive bamboo, a fox with plumped-up red winter fur emerges and heads straight for us. She's come for a breakfast, Aileen laughs. She stands up, walks over to the shed, and fills a bowl of dog biscuit, setting it down on the grass. The fox approaches warily, and then proceeds to crunch its way through the biscuit. I'm sure she's the same pup I found orphaned here about 4 years back, Aileen says. See that scratch above her eye? The fox is close enough for us to see a hairless white strip of welted flesh. She's very tame, I say. Oh, and she's handy to have around. Eats all the mice out from under the shed. We linger and watch the fox eat, the wind ruffling her coat, her eyes constantly flashing up towards us, ready to bolt at the slightest hint of danger. Right, come on then, Aileen calls me away. After all, I've come to work. Aileen is a gardener by trade as well as by passion. She runs her own business from a little silver Ford Focus, which, once the seats are down, serves as a van, carrying all her tools and a multitude of hitchhiking spiders. I've known Aileen most of my life, and I remember her waiting in the school playground at home time. Long black hair, arms heavy with book bags, corralling her twin girls, Mara and Jodie. My parents chatted with her on the walk home. My dad had no particular affinity with her at the school gates. As a fellow stop, you must remember to call her Ivy, not Ivy.
So for our next, oh, sorry, another round of applause for Joseph. I'm 3 glasses of Prosecco, guys. What can I say? On to our, well, almost final reader of the night. Georgie completed her BA in English at the University of Bristol before retreating back to her Mancunian stomping grounds to complete an MA in creative writing. She's interested in permeating the static spaces between music and spoken word poetry, and is creating her own post-punk sprech design that she is probably too shy to share with you. For now, she writes words spewed for the quieters. Georgie also writes poetry about the overlaps between identity, self-growth, queerness, environment, and feminism. So basically, our phrase home. She'll be reading a selection of poems entitled The Sight. Please welcome to the stage, Georgie!
Okay, so I'm going to read a poem with the Sight. A Reiki reader turns my hand and moves a cycle of blood, proud
and tells me I have the oldest soul she's ever known. Retrospects of lust and blazing lights flashes in my eyes like it does not matter who I've touched before. I take off what adorns me. I romanticize the moment my head slips into the backwater, turning myself over until I knock my back at my grandmother. Lying amongst mountains, life and death struggle in the river as she accepts that she's cheated death for the final time. She slips away, back into potable and water, as I wash my face and emerge from dream to watery reflections in money and the moon. I learn that I cannot always tell dreams from reality. I'm awake and blurred. My history is glitzy alternatives. Sunset shining down on all I own in life I never had. I look into the reflections of this window, mistaken for skin. My fingertips try to touch my face, but my features are unfaithful. This manifests like a mantra. Here, I am here. I awake weary-eyed and union to see the dim light of morning outline of you. A soul split into pieces. I think about smashing ice into whiskey, but my grandmother never drank. I remember how grandma had the sight, how she peered into tea leaves. I clutch a lump of amethyst and I feel the warmth that takes me here. It blurs like the way dust gleams in dark rivers across the city. As I look for my face, the river quivers with water lilies, blooming with my elders.
Let's give one more round of applause for all the readers and all the writers in the anthology this year. And this year's it's just been an experience, right? And we've all been there, but the dissertation was turned in, and the PFD prize has been announced. And at this moment, I'd like to welcome a very special guest from the PFD to make an announcement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for, look, I read 26 of these entries of the fiction and some creative non-fiction, and I was expecting to all be locked inside, not being able to read to each other, and not being able to have the amazing experience that an MA can give you. I was expecting to be dull. And it was an absolute joy. Like, I read a lot of stuff, I get, and everyone was different, and it was, I don't know whether it's, the support we're giving each other, this amazing program, or just the natural talent, but like every single one was like, I did not get bored in 26 entries. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And then tonight, because I didn't read the poets, what a joy to hear from all of you. There's some serious talent in this room. So it's an absolute joy to be involved in this. But as I said, how wonderful the level was, picking somebody to give this prize to, as I was speaking to John and Ian about this, it's like, it's an absolute nightmare. But there was a novel or a section, a dissertation that for me I was just like, I read some of, and I had to work for dinner. And I was really rude to them because I desperately wanted to read the rest of it. And then I read the rest of it, and it was just as good as the opening. And it's Robert Dean's book, Leviathan, which I don't know, I'm sure you've all heard bits of in your sessions, but my God, it's so weird and it's so wonderful. It made me laugh and it made me feel things, and I've just cornering him saying, please send the rest of it because I can't wait any longer. And I think he's agreed to read some of it off a tiny little bit on his phone, trying to format while you're all speaking. So, but just before I bring him up, I just want to say, John was giving me some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful advice. And that difference that I was talking about when I read all of your entries, I mean, a lot of people come out of MAs having shaved all the interesting corners off themselves to try to like please someone. It's like all of you have managed to avoid doing that. You're going to get rejected by a bunch of people. Please don't get boring, because like the stuff that you read tonight is so beautiful, and like it'll get better, and people give you advice, and some will be right, and some will be wrong. And yeah, people like me will be horrible sometimes. But yeah, stay interesting, and remember like the joy that's in what you've done while locked inside is really impressive. So please keep that, because you make my job really, really delightful. But Robert, please come with some.
Okay. The house was a Grade 2 listed building dating back to 1845, a time when the city was a bustling gateway between empire and colony. The street was said to have been named in remembrance of a herd of goats who drowned when the area flooded. It was more likely named after John Capricorn, the wealthy owner of the slave ship. Lest I ever took our 7 bedrooms or acre of land for granted, I was constantly reminded by my parents that these things were a rare privilege, even in South Liverpool's most sought-after postcode, L25. Though affluent locals who longed to be annexed by Cheshire sometimes wrote their addresses as CH45. Our 10-car gravel driveway, gold chandeliers and ornate fireplaces were barred from the world by tall black gates and gurning guardrails that had been restored while the rest of the city picked itself out of the post-war rubble. It was the second largest house in Liverpool, and Mum and Dad taught me to feel a strong sense of class guilt about that. Liverpool had long been a poor city and was even poorer in the 1990s. There was still money to be made, and not all of it came from drugs or Beatles tourism. The rest of the country tended to overlook the footballers' mansions across the river, or the Garston suburbs inhabited by soap actors. My dad had inherited 2 companies from his parents, a discount supermarket chain, which was hugely profitable, and another which published books on socioeconomics for young adults, which was not. My mum, head minion under Dad, lived in fear that I would develop a career-debilitating accent. In order that I grew up well-spoken and well-read, she made me read my own bedtime stories aloud, often with titles like The Quakers and Religious Socialism, or Britain's Labour Movement, Descent, Decline, and Re-emergence. We might have been quasi-aristocrats, though we never admitted. Many of our minions lived in or were encouraged to have lives of their own outside the house. None were made to wear uniforms. In fact, several wore nose rings, and one wore a French-made outfit made of PVC. Imagine a sort of cross between a manor house and a commune, which was, much like Stalin's Russia, egalitarian and hierarchical at the same time. On special nights, Mum would come and find me, usually in the garden, barefoot in the mud, and order me indoors, and quick. The threat of a smack, after the first and only one I ever received, always haunted such commands. We'd all gather around the table in near darkness for a grand feast, the sort you might have for a religious holiday. Red wine, which I was always allowed a sip of, flowed torrentially. 12 of us sat at the grand table, 12 more at small tables dotted around the dining room, tummies rumbling, waiting for everyone to be seated, waiting for Dad to utter the same 2 words that meant we could eat. And finally, when we could stand it no more, when Mara was crying and Seraphina had already helped herself to a chestnut, Dad would examine us and say, "Hail Satan," and the gorging would commence.
I almost feel like I should get up here and say Hail Satan or something to like keep the vibe. But thank you so much, Rob. We kind of coerced him into reading. He wasn't planning on it, so thank you so much. Rob was a huge part of this anthology, even though his writing's not a part of it because he was in last year's anthology. He was still on the proofreading team and the marketing and events team, so he was a huge part of this year's anthology as well, so we're really excited. And with that, thank you to everyone that came out tonight to hear the readings and to be a part of the celebration with us, and even for those that are on YouTube and watching this live, thank you so much. This will be recorded recorded and on YouTube afterwards. And the videos that played earlier, if they were too hard to see, we're uploading those after this event as well, so you'll be able to watch them in more clarity. So yeah, thank you so much. We also want to thank the Anthony Burgess Foundation and Ian Carrington for being such lovely hosts and for being such lovely tech people. So we also owe a round of applause to our tutors and the Center of New Writing staff. They have fostered the students on this MA, helping them to hone their craft, create engaging pieces found in this year's anthology. And they really have, even over Zoom, they were there for us and helped us, so thank you so much. And lastly, thank you so much to the cohort this year. We've put together this anthology. Everyone that has volunteered their time from editing to proofreading to typesetting to marketing to communications, and of course, let's not forget writing and crafting the entire collection itself. Well done, everyone. Thank you. Right. So we are here until about 9:30, and then we have an after party at home, which is just across the way. Feel free to mingle. Books are on sale out in the bar room. They're £6, cash only. If you don't have cash, that's okay. You can get them from Blackwell's after this. So it'll be on sale at Blackwell's. And please just talk to the writers, and thank you so much. John, do you want to say something? You're done.
Where's Ruby? Can Ruby come up as well? Ruby, Amy, you're such stars. Can we all give them a big round of applause?
Yes, enjoy your evening. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Can you believe it?
Yeah.